It was dusk when I arrived at the park with my loyal golden retriever, Rufus. We came most evenings for his daily walk. I clipped on his leash as we entered through the front gates into an expanse of lush grass and winding paved paths. As we ambled down the main trail bordered by tall, dense trees, I noticed something bizarre ahead on a park bench. A clown. He was dressed in full clown attire with a powdery white face, bright red nose, and shiny silver shoes. But he wasn't entertaining anyone. He sat motionless, facing away from the path, seemingly staring off blankly into the distance. I hesitated for a moment, taken aback by the presence of this clown. There were no kids around, no birthday party or event happening. He was totally alone on the bench. I felt immediate unease but told myself to stop being silly. People could wear whatever they wanted in a public park. Still, as we cautiously passed by, the hairs on my neck stood up. I averted my eyes and picked up my pace. Rufus seemed oblivious, happily trotting along, sniffing the grass. We continued ahead through a more secluded part of the park. The trees here cast long shadows as the sun dipped lower in the sky. I was grateful to have Rufus with me as an imposing wall of dense woods flanked the path on one side. Suddenly I heard it, the faint squeak of shoes on pavement steadily approaching from behind, and then an eerie, soft laughter. My heart dropped. I spun around. There, about 30 feet back, was the clown. He was slowly following us, that same blank stare on his pale face. As we locked eyes, his lips curled into an evil grin, exaggerated by the ghoulish makeup. I felt true fear now. Without thinking, I broke into a run, sneakers pounding on the concrete. Rufus bounded alongside me, energized by the sudden burst of activity. I sprinted flat out, arms pumping, my breaths jagged. How could he be moving so fast in those oversized shoes? His shiny silver boots and billowy rainbow pants entered my peripheral vision. He was gaining on us. About 100 yards ahead, I spotted the exit and a busy road beyond the park gates. I pushed harder, my lungs burning. But the clown's squeaky footsteps grew louder behind me. I risked a look back. He was mere feet away now, his hand reaching toward me as a horrific laugh erupted from deep within him. Somehow I found an extra burst of speed. I flew through the exit and across the road just as cars zoomed by. I arrived at my blue sedan, searching my pockets for my keys. But my keys were gone. No. This couldn't be happening. Then to my horror, I realized the truth. I must have dropped them while running from this evil clown. I was trapped now outside my car as the empty park sat at my back. Darkness had fallen and the street was quiet. I felt utterly alone, except for the approaching squeak of shiny shoes. In desperation, I attempted to wrench the car door open, but it was useless. As the clown neared, I let out a blood-curdling scream for help. His chalky white hand grabbed my shoulder violently just as Rufus sprang into action. My brave dog sank his teeth into the clown's leg, causing him to loosen his grip on me. I shook free, stumbling backward. But the clown merely kicked Rufus aside effortlessly and moved toward me, pinning me against the car. His face was mere inches from mine, the putrid smell of grease paint filling my nose. I stared into his cold, black eyes, paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, blinding headlights interrupted us. A good Samaritan driving by had heard my screams. He pulled up just in time, yelling if I needed help. Snapping out of my terrified trance, I fought back against the clown with adrenaline-fueled ferocity. I kneed him in the groin and then pushed with all my might until he released me. I lurched into the idling car with Rufus and screeched at the driver to go. As we sped off, I glanced back and saw the clown sprinting after us, wielding a large hunting knife that glinted under the streetlights. His insane, high-pitched laughter echoed through the night air. But soon the car turned a corner and he vanished from sight. My hands shook as I hugged Rufus, trying to calm my frayed nerves. I knew I needed to return to get my keys and report this to the police immediately. But by the time I came back with 2 officers in tow, there was no sign of the psychotic clown anywhere near the park. No one at the station had received reports of him either. It was like he never existed. The police searched but found nothing alarming on the premises. However, sitting neatly on the bench where I first spotted the clown were my keys. Needless to say, I won't be taking any more evening strolls through that park again. And Rufus will get extra treats for being such a good, brave boy. But I still shudder imagining what might have happened if we hadn't escaped that clown. Something tells me this wasn't just a random attack. It was well past midnight as I drove down the dark rural highway. I had been at a friend's bachelorette party that night in the next town over. The celebrations had gone late, so now I was blearily making my way home alone on these dim back roads. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the reflective road markers as they whizzed by in a hypnotic blur. Other than the dull roar of my engine, silence permeated the countryside here. No lights or signs of civilization anywhere, just my car swallowed up by the night. As I rounded a bend, my lights flashed upon a figure up ahead frantically waving their arms. I slowed reflexively. It was a disheveled young man standing on the side of the highway next to a dilapidated backpack. In his hands, he held a piece of cardboard scrawled with the words, "Help me." My initial instinct was to keep driving. This was textbook hitchhiker behavior, and I knew better than to pick up strangers out here alone at this hour. But something about the desperation in his eyes gave me pause. He looked genuinely afraid and in need of help. What if he was the victim of a crime or accident? Against my better judgment, I pulled over. "Oh, thank God," he exhaled in relief as I lowered the passenger window apprehensively. "My name's Alex. Please, you have to help me get out of here before they come back." He spoke fast and erratically, looking nervously over each shoulder. I noticed a few cuts and bruises marking his face. "I'm Jenny," I replied. "Are you okay? What happened?" "No time to explain," he panted, eyes still darting around. "Just know I escaped from a cult compound deep in the woods here. But they're still after me. Please, I just need a ride to the next town." My skepticism must have shown on my face. A cult compound out here? That seemed dubious. And yet, there was true palpable fear in this Alex's voice. Perhaps he was having some mental episode, I considered. Either way, leaving him alone out here in this state didn't feel right. "Okay, get in," I finally said. Alex exhaled in relief again and hastily loaded his bag in the back seat before hopping up front. As I pulled cautiously back onto the dark road, he slunk down nervously in his seat like he was hiding. "So, what is this cult exactly?" I asked carefully, trying to make sense of it all. "They call themselves the Divine Order," Alex replied, eyes still shifty. "I don't know how they brainwashed me into joining. I was in a vulnerable place back then. They isolate you from society out there deep in the woods, making you dependent on them. It's taken me over a year to escape." He spoke faster now, his words spilling out in a torrent. I thought I had gotten away clean, but they have eyes everywhere, informants in town. When they couldn't find me at the bus station tonight, I realized they must be tracking me somehow. I started walking these back roads, trying to get far away until I could expose what they're doing out there. But I know they're still after me. I can feel it. I nodded along, though his story seemed far-fetched. I imagined he had probably just had an argument with his parents or roommates and stormed off angrily into the night. But clearly, he was in a panicked state, so I remained compassionate. Just then, Alex jerked abruptly in his seat. "Did you hear that?" he gasped. "Hear what?" I asked, focusing intently on the road ahead. "That sound from the back seat." I shook my head, straining my ears. "I didn't hear anything." But Alex turned fully around, peering into the shadows of the back seat with a look of sheer horror. "There's someone in your trunk, too. Pull over, we have to check." Now I was growing worried, both for my safety and Alex's mental health. But I continued driving steadily ahead. "There's no one back there, Alex. I think you might be confused right now. Just try to relax." He wasn't listening, now rifling through the glove box for some kind of weapon. "They found me again, I know it. Please, pull over." Sensing the situation escalating, I knew I had to get us back to civilization soon. Alex was clearly unstable and imagining phantom noises and pursuers, but when I tried subtly increasing our speed, he became only more erratic. "Stop the car!" he suddenly shouted. "They're here!" Before I could react, he grabbed the steering wheel, forcing me to swerve to the road's edge. Slamming on the brakes, I lurched to a stop halfway into the dirt. My chest heaved as Alex threw open his door. He grabbed my keys and yelled, "I heard them, stay here." Before I could object, he sprinted to the rear of the car. I watched in bewilderment through the back windshield as he pawed at the trunk, trying to get it open. This was my chance. Heart pounding, I shoved open my door and took off running full speed down the dark highway, putting distance between me and the deranged stranger. I could hear him shouting after me now, but I didn't look back. At least a mile down, my lungs burned and I had to stop. Bent over panting, I listened intently for any sounds of pursuit, but there was only silence. After catching my breath, I turned cautiously back. In the distance, my car's shape was just barely visible in the murky darkness, its hazards still blinking. Slowly, I crept back toward it. There was still no sign of Alex anywhere. I peered into the back seat, nothing. I popped the trunk, empty. Where had he gone? A twig snapped behind me. I spun around. Alex stood there, an unhinged smile forming on his face. In his hand glinted a large hunting knife that he must have retrieved from his bag. "Oh, Jenny," he clucked. "You should know better than to pick up hitchhikers." He began advancing toward me, blade extended. I retreated, my hands held up pleadingly. "The Divine Order sends their regards," he sneered. Paralyzed with dread. This had been a trap all along. Alex was no escaping victim. He was a lure sent by the cult to bring in fresh prey. I backed away faster, crying out for help against the futility of the remote night. Alex kept approaching, deranged satisfaction in his eyes at my terror. I knew then I would not be making it home tonight, nor would anyone be finding me on this desolate highway, not until the Divine Order had finished with me.